Good evening and welcome to another World Building Workshop. Tonight, it's time to build an encounter. We've spent the last couple of episodes building your world, and now it's time to fill that world with the things that your players encounter, right? That is the whole point here. We're going to discuss the 3 types of encounters. We'll build each of those types of encounters, and we'll also discuss the 5-room dungeon, or what I like to call the 5-step encounter, and how we can use that as a framework or a structure to help us build encounters for our players on the fly. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, welcome everybody. We've been working on The Rising Tide for a couple of weeks now, and I'm excited. I'm excited because it's finally time to create the user interface, right? Everything that we've built up to this point is the world, and that, of course, is what our players encounter. But at the end of the day, the quote-unquote encounters that we create are what our players use to judge their progress. It's what they use to judge how far they've progressed through a story, how far they've come or gone, or so on and so forth. It's where the action is inside of the encounter. But of course, there are 3 different types of encounters that we need to discuss. The first type of encounter is probably my favorite type of encounter, and that is roleplay encounters. We can't put down how important the roleplay is, because the roleplay is just another way that our players interact with our world, with NPCs. It's how they learn information, is through that roleplay. And what's important for our players to learn in that roleplay is, of course, secrets. And these secrets, these are those cherished hooks, the hooks that get our players from point to point to point, that move us forward through the story. And for some reason, that looks a little far away today. Let's go ahead. I don't know. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that for you guys here. Zoom. Let's see how much. Yeah, let's just zoom in just a little bit. There we go. There we go. Just a little bit bigger. And those hooks, those are what pull players through the plot. Because we as dungeon masters or game masters, we can always build this elaborate world or elaborate plots and stories. But if our players aren't interacting with them, if they aren't doing anything that we have planned, then perhaps, number 1, you should probably be planning something else. But number 2, there are ways to get them back onto that path, and that is with hooks. That's with roleplay encounters. They need to meet what I like to call a valuable NPC. There are plenty of NPCs that are memorable, right? I'm sure that you can think of an NPC that you thought, oh wow, that was really cool, super memorable. But did it actually give value to the table? Was there anything about the NPC that gave value to the players? Did they actually have anything of value? And that is what we want to achieve. We want valuable NPCs, or NPCs that are going to give us those secrets or those hooks. So they can also be memorable, and we can make our memorable NPCs valuable by giving them these secrets. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, just having a memorable NPC, yeah, that's okay, but it's not going to progress the story. So keep that in mind. The next style of encounter is, of course, our combat encounters. And combat encounters are great. They're all well and good. Hey, Erthos, good to have you, man. They're really good and they're important, right? Because that's so much of what the game is designed on, is the combat mechanics. What things can your character do in combat, right? So the combat encounter should be also, I guess you could say, meaningful or valuable to our players. It should provide our players the opportunity to flex those muscles, to try new things with their character, to in its own way, a combat encounter should be a sort of puzzle. Now, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, we need to move the rock into this formation mid combat. What I'm saying is beating the boss or beating the character is in its way its own puzzle, right? I'm hoping that that makes sense to you, because that combat, that's what that needs to be doing for us. It is all a part of the resource management, the economy of your role-playing game takes place in the combat. Swashbuckling Bob, good to have you. This falls under combat, comically enough, a bit of drinking contest between dwarves, possibly, and I would actually call that more along the lines of a utility. So I'm actually going to write that down, because that is the next type of encounter. But I would put that down here, and I'll explain why in a moment. But when we're doing our combat encounters, there's 3 things that we need to be considering. And I like to call them the 3 Ps. We need a cool power. Something about the combat needs to be engaging. The characters need to have a cool power of some way, some dynamic ability, something that does something. The next is a place. We need a cool place. Stop fighting in the middle of a great big empty room. That's not realistic. It's not, heck, and we're not even going for realism here. That's not fun or engaging, right? A fun and engaging combat encounter takes place in a dynamic setting. Think about a cool combat scene from any movie, right? Any movie. And of course, like, the first thing that pops into my mind is the transporter. Jason Statham, the transporter, right? And in this scene, he's fighting like 7 or 8 bad guys. And what he does is he like dives into the oil bin, right? The leftover oil bin, and slicks himself up. He wouldn't have been able to do that if it was just in the middle of an empty basketball court, right? The fight had to take place in that environment, right? There was something in that environment for the protagonist to interact with, to create that fun moment of, oh yeah, now he's using something to his benefit or to his ability. Another one that comes to mind is Born Identity, right? He goes to the home of an agent, and they're fighting in the home, and they're using resources from around the house to fight each other. The cord from the lamp, rolled up magazine, they're all up in the blinds and stuff, and all of that creates a fun and dynamic scene for us, the viewer. The same thing happens with our tabletop role-playing game, and I would say even more so, because it's all in the mind. It's all imagination. So we need to be doing things for our players, providing them something in this cool place so that they can interact with that. And I'll talk a little bit more about the torch when we build our scene, when we build this combat encounter later. And then, of course, after power of the place, we need a parlay. We need to have somebody have something to say, because not everybody at our table is going to be a hack and slasher. Not everybody here built a min-maxed damage dealing machine. There's probably a couple people at your table that are here for the role play, and we can provide them that little bit of role play right here at the table in the middle of a combat scene, right? And it's a really fun thing for that player, for that person, when they, oh yes, it's the dastardly banter between Megamind and Titan, right? Now you say something witty in return, right? That's what we need to be providing those sorts of players, because there are people that are Megamind out there. They're looking for the witty banter between the villain and the good guy, and that's cool. Other people are Jason Statham, and they just want to smash some skulls. That's cool too. And by following this kind of format, we can provide that. We can provide an engaging combat to all of our players, regardless of their play style. Something to keep in mind. And then, of course, the almighty, the most powerful, the utility, the puzzle. So Triple Dub, we're going to actually talk about that. Triple Dub on Twitch mentions, I wish I was better at banter. And we are definitely going to talk about preparing ahead of time, what I would call voice lines. And so we'll prepare a couple when we make our combat encounter. So thanks for bringing that up, because I think that's something that we all struggle with. The utility encounter, also known as the puzzle encounter. I like to call them utility encounters because of what the puzzle should be doing, right? The puzzle is an opportunity to use our skills for the player to look at their skills and say, how can I solve the problem? Right? It's all about solving the problem. It has nothing to do with the riddle that you got off of the Denny's menu. That's not helpful. That's not an engaging or enjoyable puzzle. An engaging or enjoyable utility encounter or puzzle is an open-ended problem that our players need to solve. They need to find a way to solve the problem. And that problem could be any number of things. My favorite is, of course, the chasm, right? Cross the chasm. Okay, how? Well, there's a bridge nearby. Oh, the bridge is broken. Or it's so sketchy that you don't want to step on it. You step on the first board and someone's foot smashes through the board. You're like, okay, we're not going to do that. And then you have presented your players with the problem. We need to get from point A to point B across a vast chasm. How are we going to do that? And this is the opportunity for your players to say, oh, well, I have this ability, or I have this item, or I have this tool, and it allows them to then use the other parts of their character sheet and not just wing it, I guess. Not just the objective is to get your player out of the paper and think about, okay, what would my character do to solve this problem? Well, my character could just misty step across. Excellent. But how is my character going to help my buddy who has no ability to do that, right? And then you are creating the environment for your players to sit there, because this is just, guess what, everybody? This is just role play between the players. This is an opportunity for your players to role play together. Okay? This is role play with you. This is fight you. This is role play with each other. And I would say that with the so Bob brought up the dwarven drinking competition. That's probably a utility puzzle, right? Because we could just make it make a constitution check and a series of constitution checks, and like, okay, we could do more, we could do better, we could make this into how is your character actually going to win this competition? Because you're not going to be able to outdrink this dwarf. And so now it's, hey heroes, it's good to have you. So now it's no longer just a series of rolls and the luck of the die. Now your players have to think, okay, well, can I cast aid on him? You could maybe, but not without other people seeing that. Okay, so now we need, hey, can you cause a distraction so that I can cast this spell? So that I can move, cast Lesser Restoration and remove his poison condition or something. That's the whole point. It's all about creating the imagination, right? Use the imagination first, stat second. Exactly right, Bob. Triple Dub on Twitch. I've been wanting to come up with a casino kind of deal for my players. I think it would be a perfect for downtime. Yeah, and that's fun. That's a fun and engaging environment You just have to think of ways to make it more than just, all right, go ahead and make a constitution roll, right? We need to find a puzzle in there, the problem, right? It doesn't have to be Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda style puzzle where you got to take the stone and you put it on the special spot in the temple. Like, no, it doesn't need to be that. It can be so much more, but we have to get their imagination thinking of, okay, how do I solve this problem? And all that starts with is us presenting an open-ended problem to our players. And we personally don't need to solve it. That's not our job. That is not the job of the game master to solve the problems of the protagonist. We are the world. We are the NPCs. We are the villains. Our job is to say, you have been presented with this problem, and then sit there and listen and say, ooh, that sounds good. Let's make a check on that. Or, that's not going to fly. Try something else, right? Yes, and, right? Remember the rules of improv. Ooh, that sounds good, but let's try more, or let's try this, or something different's going to happen. Something to keep in mind. Mr. Told Guy Gaming on Twitch. Here are the games for next session. Ooh, fun. We've got a resource in the chat. Thanks for sharing that in the drive. Very kind of you. Everybody who's on Instagram, feel free to come over to Twitch or YouTube, whatever your preference is. You can see the chat. You can see all of the notes that are getting put down on paper. Come on over and hang out. So that is our utility. What you could call it is OSR puzzles. And this is old school revival or old school renaissance. And that is, you could just look that up. I think there's a really good list of like 1D124 or something nonsensical like that from Dice Goblin or Goblin Punch or something like that of old school Renaissance puzzles. And they're all just open-ended problems for your players to solve. Take that resource, bend it, stick it into your game however you can. So with this, the three types of encounter, it probably becomes a little bit more realistic for us in the, hey, you should be having 6 to 10 encounters per game, right? Because it's not all encounters are combat encounters. There can be more or less. There's all sorts of different varieties of encounters. Think of an encounter as a problem to solve. They could all be problems to solve. Something to think about there. Okay? But now let's talk about what do we want to do? Things I Know is in on YouTube. Good to have you. Let's start with hey James. Let's start with the 5-room dungeon. So anyone who wants to know about the 5-room dungeon, James 4, I think it's 2 R's. James 4 is the wizard behind the curtain of the 5-room dungeon. And the 5-room dungeon breaks down to this. We have an entrance or guardian, right? A reason that people have not been here before, right? This is commonly applied to a combat or like a typical dungeon, right? For the 5-room dungeon. Entrance or guardian. Okay. Then we have the puzzle or the opportunity for roleplay. Guess what? Roleplay. This should look familiar. Golly gee. The puzzle or roleplay. Then we have the 3rd room of our 5-room dungeon is the setback. And the setback could also be referred to as the red herring. It's essentially the plot thickens moment. Yes, and for the dungeon master. This is, Lord of the Rings. I need to remember that. I'm going to go through this and then I'll show you how this works by using Lord of the Rings. There's a moment in Lord of the Rings that's perfect for this. Then we have the climax. This is the climactic finale, the big moment within the dungeon. This is commonly where you'd fight the the minion or the evil guy who is the occupant of this dungeon. Not necessarily, it could be the big bad evil guy, but it could just be the dungeon boss or the mini boss or whomever. Because we can apply this to any of our encounter styles and types, and I'll show you how. And then we have the twist or reward, or both. The twist or reward. Very good. So, the entrance or guardian. Let's think of the wonderful moment in Lord of the Rings when it's time to go through the mines of Moria. A mine! And they called it a mine, right? Through the mines. Our entrance or guardian. Why are people just not kicking around here? Well, we have this interesting puzzle. The door, right? The friendship door. Okay. Speak friend and enter, right? The friend door. And we have the creature in the lagoon, right? So there's kind of a double whammy there. Once they solve the friend, we had a little minor plot thickens because someone activated the trap, right? You kicked the rock into the water and then the thing in the water wakes up and problems. So then we've got the monster outside. So we get kind of a double whammy for the entrance and the guardian in the front. Nothing saying you can't do that too. Okay. And then the puzzle or the role play. This is navigating the mine. This is, I have no recollection of this place. This is the moment for your players to solve the open-ended problem. How do we get through the mines? This has grown and become so much more than the last time I was here. I have no recollection of this place. The goblins and the orcs have expanded the mines, further deepening the problem. Then, of course, our setback. Okay, we encounter bad guys, setback. So now we flee. Now we're fleeing down the stairs. Ooh, the plot thickens. Further setback. Now, as we're fleeing down the stairs, we're getting shot at by those orcs. The plot thickens even further. So we just have one thing after another. So this is navigate the mines, right? Navigate the mines, and then we have escape the orcs, essentially. So now we're navigating the mines while escaping the orcs. Escape. Of course, our climactic moment is Gandalf facing off with the Balrog. Okay, the Balrog. Facing off against the Balrog, and that is a huge climactic moment as Gandalf falls down the pit and everything. And then the reward, as they flee, they are kind of guided on to the next stage of their path as they're welcomed as they find themselves in the forest with the forest elves and things like that, right? So the twist there, of course, is revealed later with Gandalf having survived the encounter. The twist is losing their high-level NPC, right? And now our players are stuck on this path without their high-level NPC. And that is a great example of how the 5-room dungeon can be used, how we can use that in our games. And I mentioned before that it could be used for your I'm writing down here where no one can see. How it can be used for your utility encounters or just a straight up combat encounter, and how all of these, the role play, the combat, and the utility, can be shoved into this super compact moment. And with that, we can create a really well-rounded, really fun encounter or evening for our players. This is a solid 3-hour block here. If you were just to hop into a 5-room dungeon or a 5-step encounter, you're probably looking at like a good 3 hours, depending upon the puzzles and how well, if your players are anything like my players, they'll sit there and deliberate about how to solve the puzzles, and they'll pull a Gandalf and they'll stand there in front of the door and, you know, murmur everything and make all the arcana checks they can until finally they figure out, oh yeah, it's puzzle, speak friend and enter, right? So that's an easy comparison there. But now, the moment we've been waiting for, how can we, let's see what this looks like as we make one. So that was us comparing it to cinema, more cinema rather than literature. But we can also use this, and we can whip out this format to make stuff up on the fly. We can encounter something with our players as they're like, oh, we're going to go do this instead. And you're like, oh, no, I'm not prepared. This is a great format for how to create a well-balanced encounter for our players. So we're talking about the rising tide here. The rising tide environment has been in the seascape, this kind of tropical island environment. And so I had the thought earlier today, we definitely need to make a like a haunted ship beneath the waves sort of thing, or a beneath the sea encounter where they have to go recover a... Oh, you sly dog, you had me monologue again. Yeah, right. There's that. Thanks for bringing that up. 30 minutes of me monologuing. But now, so we're gonna do like a sunken ship encounter, where, okay, so let's talk about this for a moment. Reasons to have a 5-step encounter, right? Reasons for this. There should be a reason. Otherwise, why does this place exist? Why does it matter to us? And that's our hook. Remember our hook from our role-play encounter? Ooh. So all it is you start your session. Oh yeah, you're in this place and you meet this meaningful, valuable NPC and they hook you with something. Oh, just off beyond the breaks, I was escorting, some wizened old pirate talking about he was on a shipwreck, and the payload of this ship was just thousands and thousands of gold pieces and magical things or whatever you need to hook your players. And then say, oh yes, just beyond the whatever island matters to you, the ship sank, but no one was able to find it. But I knew because I was the helmsman or whatever and whatever. Okay? Hook initiated. Bam. Okay? Now, so we're doing this sunken treasure 5-step encounter. Sunken treasure, a sunken pirate ship. Cool. Sunken treasure encounter. Why has this not been found? The Guardian. Okay, so what if it's in especially deep waters? We need a reason that this has not just been retrieved. So an entrance or a guardian here. This is our, what's the reason? And I would think for a lot of parties, probably the entrance, the puzzle for them the utility puzzle for them to overcome is going to be, how do we get down there? Right? If this truly is a sunken treasure, how do we get down there? So holding the breath, the breathing problem is going to be a situation, right? So that is going to be probably a pretty good utility puzzle, right? We'll put a UP there for utility puzzle. But if you've got a couple hack and slashers, in addition to that, I think we've located it based on the wizened old pirate's description. We're in the right spot. Time to go down. You could do a shark encounter if you've got a couple hack and slashers, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. 2 or 3 rounds tops, a minor encounter, just enough to pull a couple resources away. Somebody's leg gets chomped. A couple spells get cast. Someone's at risk of drowning at some point. Just enough to kind of put them on edge and let them realize, hey, this is not a safe place. This is not a good place to be. So maybe we could toss in some sharks there. That would make for a good problem to have, a good problem to solve, a problem to solve, utility puzzle, right? A problem to solve. This, of course, leads us into the puzzle or the role play. This is where I would recommend you need to create a conundrum. So it's not just, oh yeah, this is the utility puzzle to get down there. This is the utility puzzle to find the goods. Okay, we're at the ship, we're at the bottom of the sea. Now we need to, well, how are we going to get this out? How are we going to get it out of here? Maybe that could be, heck, that could be all the puzzle that it needs to be. Triple Dub on Twitch says, maybe the old sailor has a homebrew potion he is willing to give the NPC or the PCs if they give him some gold pieces from the wreckage. A potion of breathing underwater. That is actually a really fun idea, and I think that in addition to that, like, I'm too old to go out there myself or whatever, but I will give you the information and part of a way to get there if you, in return, give me some of the gold, my share of the loot, if you will, because that is essentially what, why would the old sailor bring them in on it? There's no reason to tell them anything about it unless he's just too deep in his cups, sort of thing. And so there has to be a reason for him to bother giving them that. So that could be a good. I like that option. But this could just be, okay, how do we retrieve this trove of treasure? That in and of itself is a conundrum, especially if you're kind of in that, I would say a tier 2 party in that 5 to 10 level range. That's going to be difficult. That's a difficult puzzle for your players to solve, is how we get this treasure out of the sea now. And it could just be, oh, well, we'll bring ropes down, I guess. Okay. But now we have the setback. The setback here is easy, right? A creature shows up. Okay. And that, or minions of a creature. There we go. Let's do that. So kind of a foreshadow of the creature, because we're in the sea. There's absolutely no reason to not have a monstrous creature. Ooh, here we go. Instead of minions of a creature, a rival party. So somebody that has been shadowing them or like following them is trying to scalp the treasure out from underneath them, sort of thing. And so they show up. There could be a little bit of what's the national treasure sort of thing, where it's like the good treasure hunter team and the bad treasure hunter team, and they arrive at the same place at the same time. Very similar vibe here is what I'm imagining, and having this rival party racing them to this treasure, this great trove. That's fun. That's super fun, especially if you have a good NPC, a reoccurring NPC, or a PC from a previous campaign. That would be pristine right there. Having a player character from a previous campaign serving as the rival party NPC here, someone who is going to race them for the treasure, that's exactly what your players do, like, all the time. So having the NPC version of them racing them to the treasure would be so much fun. It would make for a great setback, is realizing, oh man, someone's already beat us to the treasure. Like there's a guy like hauling treasure out or something like that. I don't know, something fun like that. And then of course the arrival of the creature could create this great climax moment. That is super fun, and it would potentially create, you could use this to potentially create a do we help this rival party, this old PC that kind of diverged? This could be a good use of a player character that kind of went off the evil end, and so you retired that character and got a new player character. And so using that kind of evil character that the party has a connection to would be a lot of fun there. So maybe it could take a little bit of setup for this moment, but if the moment's there, then the moment's right, definitely use that. But of course, you might not even need to you don't need to fight the creature. It's maybe just an escape the creature, which can be tough, right? This is a tough moment because players want to be heroic. They want to be heroic, and so a heroic moment is not fleeing from the monstrous creature. That's not super heroic. And so it's hard to get your players to buy in on that idea. So we have to sell it somehow. And since we have this rival party, that could be how we do it. What you do is you describe, the rival party loading the parts of the treasure that they were able to get onto their ship. And then as you're reaching your vessel, and you're pulling yourself aboard your vessel with what sacks of treasure you were able to carry, a creature arrives and just like snaps the rival party's ship. And so then your players might be, you describe as their sailors and rival party members swimming and dying and fighting and all the things. And your players are then faced with a really great moral moment. Facing the moral, what will they do? Do they turn ship and run? Do they try and pull sailors out of the sea and fight off the creature? Do they sail straight ahead and like try to fight the creature? Who knows? Who knows who your party is? And they'll do crazy things. Bob on Instagram says, plot twist, the leader of the rival party is the captain of the vessel that sent the other to the bottom. Anyway, hey, that could do it. That could be a way to tie everything back in. That could be fun. And at the end of the day, that's what all this boils down to, is creating and finding fun ways to express the moment, right? To express a fun encounter for our players, because our players at the table are a diverse group of people who experience things differently. So we want to have a varied number of things. So, oh yes, and then our twist. That could be our twist as that moment is revealed, sort of thing. That could be a fun twist. The reward could simply be getting away with what you've got. The reward could be as they pull. A fun one could be as they pull a member of the rival party aboard, sort of thing. They find a piece of information on him that leads to more, or because he saved them, the party saved that character. He swears some sort of oath of discipleship and lets them know of further plans and plots and things, reveals further secrets, right? And guess what? It's like that secret just hooks us into the next 5-step encounter, and this is just going to cycle over and over and over. Let's get it all, yeah. And that is just going to cycle over and over. Here we go. Will, any suggestions on how to estimate the duration of a session, or more specifically, a one-shot? How do I know if my one session or one shot is too long or too short? Every group is different, obviously, but is there a recommended way to guesstimate the duration? I think that this is a perfect moment to describe what I like to do. So I love this, right? The 5-step encounter. If you have something prepared for that, looking at 3 hours. For my group, that's a solid 3 hours, right? So we'll go to YouTube, rewatch this. The hook, the puzzle, the setback, the creature, the twist, all the things, all of that goes into probably 3 hours. I generally play between 4 and 5 hours with my players. That's how long a general session is, between 3 and 5 hours. So I use my 3-2-1 method. Okay. If you've seen me on Instagram, I talk about my 3-2-1 method. It's 3 scenes. Okay. So have 3 scenes described or prepared. 2 combats. Put the T in there. And 1 meaningful or memorable, valuable role play. And guess what? That 1 role play gives us the hook. It gives us this hook right here in the notes. It gives us that hook. Okay? that sets us into combat 1 right here, combat 2 right here. Okay, our scenes. All right, we have the inn or the tavern that you met the old sailor. The inn, sure. Okay, we have aboard the ship. There's 2. The ship itself, getting out there. And then we have the sunken ship, the location of the treasure. And that's 3. It's like it all works together. So we have these 3 scenes fit our 5-step encounter, which work with our 2 combats or our 2 utility puzzles. Okay, all of these things work together, and they create a session that's between 3 and 5 hours. So if you're looking, here's the kicker. The kicker here is running a session that is like, hey, I got 3 hours. That's all I got. That's a tough thing to ask. And what that requires is a lot of cinematic work on your end. I recommend, if you're like, hey, I only have 3 hours, drop them into the first room. 0 premise. Okay? And if you need to premise it, you give them 2, maybe 3 sentences. Okay? 2 or 3 sentences, and just say, hey, your group has found the ship or found this pirate, this old pirate, retired. He tells you of this sunken treasure. He gives you a map for 20%. You're on your vessel on your way to the sunken treasure, and bam, roll initiative, and you just jump into it. So that's the first thing, because you can waste an hour and a half with all of the dinking around the inn and chit-chatting and talking, and someone's inevitably like, I'm going to enter Bob. Someone's inevitably like, oh, I'm going to enter a dwarven drinking contest. And it's just like, no, man, that's not what we're doing right now. But yeah, so that's my recommendation. Will, bravo on your content. Thanks, man. Apparently your 3-2-1 has subconsciously permeated my brain for a one-shot. Yes, check it out. Check it out on Instagram. I talk about it a lot. But things I know. Apparently YouTube is about 30 seconds behind Twitch, but my Wi-Fi is crummy, so Twitch was cutting out on me. Yeah. But that's our encounter. So let's talk about, so the hook, we just need a secret. We need a secret prepared. Because we're doing some things. Triple dub. How do we prepare for our parlay, right? So we're in our parlay. We have our fun place for our combat. On a ship on the sea. That's crazy. That's crazy place. Very dynamic. Having to consider breathing or whatever's going on there. Our fun powers. Any number of powers could be cool, but I love giving mobility powers to things that don't normally have them. The moment your bandit misty steps and people didn't anticipate it misty stepping is a moment where you go, hey, wait a second, man. Like, I was duking it out. Like, what's the big deal? As you misty step behind the front line and you gank the wizard, that's when everyone's like, hey, man, like, wait a second. Like, who said you could do that? And that's a moment that your players are suddenly more engaged, because they're like, people are doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing. And that is just a way to further invest your players into that moment. And then, of course, the parlay. The ever dreadful parlay. Prepare voice lines. If you have an NPC or a character or a villain in the moment, prepare voice lines ahead of time. 1 or 2, nothing crazy, but consider your NPC, what its purpose is, why it exists, what it's doing, and how the protagonists, because remember, every villain is the protagonist of their own story, right? And so they are living life, and your players are the NPCs that keep they're the antagonists that keep screwing with my plans. You crummy kids, like, why do you keep messing with my stuff? And so just prepare a couple of voice lines with that in mind. From the villain's perspective, like, what are you doing to my situation? I am getting this treasure so that I can pull my home island out of poverty, because they've all been forced into an indentured servitude to pay for their floating homes because of the rising tide. And so, like, an entire island of my indigenous population are now living under indentured servitude under some Don who owns a certain amount of property that has let them rent pieces of the property and essentially turned them into slaves. And so I need this treasure to help save my people from this horrible situation. And so seeing your players like, hey, I'm just going to get rich, that would drive your quote unquote villain, your antagonist, up the wall. Absolutely unacceptable behavior for someone to, how dare you prevent me from helping the people that I love? That is a great moment that you could potentially create in this sort of environment. Best advice I can give is to listen to the old timer tell stories of his glory days to his grandchildren. Yeah, of course. Always listen to the NPC. Things I know. I used a Wraith for the first time a week or so ago, and the look on my players' faces when their HP max was reduced was priceless. I'm definitely equipping future big bad evil guys with that ability, right? Whenever you do something permanent, or you permanently, I had one that was great, kind of a similar feel. It was a creeping crystal encounter, and if the players touched this crystal, it would begin to quickly and rapidly spread around them, and it reduced their speed by 5 every time the crystal crept. And so by the 3 rounds in, and the dwarf, who already had like a 25 speed, is moving like a horrible sprinting like 10 feet sort of thing, that created a serious amount of tension. And it was all just because, oh yeah, your speed is now reduced by 5 because of this creeping crystal. It was a really great moment. It really helped create a cool power for that scene. It was super fun. I think that is it. We're gonna try and keep this episode below the 45 minutes, but I creep so long because I just love talking about this stuff. But of course, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out. As always, everyone on Instagram, please come check out YouTube, Twitch, whatever your preference is. Like, follow, subscribe, all the good stuff. Will, love your suggestion. Give the bandit a misty step. Yeah, any suggestions to make such NPC changes without drastically changes? That's exactly it. So mobility is a really great way to do that. There is a book, I wish I had it within arm's reach, but The Monsters Know What They're Doing is an excellent blog. It started off as a blog, but because his blog was so well received, he turned it into a book, and then he turned it into Monsters Know What They're More Monsters Know What They're Doing, and then the players know what they're doing. And so he has a bunch of really great suggestions on, hey, taking a look at the stats of this creature and the general idea of this creature, the concept, this is the sort of things that we should be doing tactically with these villains, right? This is an ambush predator. You need to be ambushing players with it. Don't just stand there in front of it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Don't just stand there in an empty room. That's not what this creature would do. A bunch of kobolds, they're generally timid. Yeah, they're obnoxious and they're all the things, but as soon as they see people, some barbarian literally rip them in half, the rest are going to run. And it's okay to have them do that. Put enough kobolds in the encounter so that your players can get all their killing in and then have 5 or 6 of them flee in terror because of the absolute butt kicking that your players are putting on them. That is normal, logical, actual behavior that would make sense for characters. And having your villains operate like that makes the world so much more real. We should, and at the end of the day, we should very rarely be fighting to the death, right? You're a group of bandits corner you in an alley as you enter this new town. You kill a couple of them like brutally. The rest of the bandits are dropping their shivs and they're running because that's not the sort of violence they're used to, right? Maybe in this large town they're used to extreme gang violence like that. Okay, they might have heavier weapons to represent that. Some of these thug members might have a higher AC because they're actually armored. It might be super ghetto armor, but they're armored because of the gang violence that's taking place. It's a super easy way to make the villains or make your bad guys feel more real without completely altering the CR of the encounter. So hope that helps, Will. Man, I know I could just chit chats. I could just keep on talking, but I hope that helps. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and give our wrap up. If there are any further questions, come on over to YouTube or Twitch. We'll talk them out through the after party. If not, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. As always, take care of your players. All right, YouTube and Twitch. If there's nothing else, it sounds like we're all pretty much good. Sounds good. Yeah, pretty much the max HP reduced. Yeah. All right, you guys. Appreciate you hanging out. Have fun, and as always,